Hi YouTube. Um, in this video I want to talk about putting things into context. When I woke up, or what woke me up from abuse was doing the research into narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy, how that affects someone in that sort of environment, and things like that. And as we know, when we start looking into these sort of things, we start to see connections with the abusers, as far as this is, the literature talking about, or other abuse survivors talking about how their testimony on how these people behave, gaslighting and all that sort of stuff. So that was, for me, it was the initial thing that put me into shock regarding these are what my biological parents are, my family of origin, some exes and other people that I knew. So by doing that, I was able to put into context over time where their communication comes from, as far as their mental state, where their behaviours of abuse upon myself and upon others comes from. So that ended up being sort of part of the puzzle, or part of putting it into context. So there was sort of like this part. This is what they are. This is how they think. This is how they behave. And I came to a point where I realised, hang on a second, if they are what other survivors are saying they are, and what knowledgeable psychologists are describing, and what the other literature says as far as having no conscience and things of that nature, narcissist, sociopath, psychopath, then there's got to be another part to it. So if I've grown up in that environment, which I was learning about at the time, then I'm going to have symptoms of being abused as a kid. So from there, I went on to research, okay, what are the signs of an abused child? And from there, I had the epiphanies, the pennies started to drop, and I started to see, wow, I have been abused. So it ended up being, this is what they are, these are my abuse symptoms, and they're a result of being around these people. So in this video, I want to share my abuse symptoms from probably the age of 3 up until about 19 or 20. And the purpose of doing this is it's not to say, I've been abused more or less than somebody else or anything like that. It's not a competition thing. It's a context thing. So part of it's for validation for other people and that, but it's also to try and get this point across of putting it into context. And putting into context was the origin for me of that return to sender technique that I used. They spoke to me in a certain way with the path, the projective identification, and by putting into context and realizing that they have a problem, they have a personality disorder, and that's one of the behaviors of a personality disorder, and putting into context that they're lying to me about who I am, and that they're also telling me the truth about who they are, I was able to return it back to them. And that's not me, that's you. You can wear it, fuck off. I refuse to internalize it, and instead I externalize it and put it back onto them. So here are my symptoms growing up. The first one, well, they're not in a particular order really. So by the age of 12, I'd experienced sexual and physical abuse by both my parents. I've mentioned before, not in video, but the sexual abuse by my dad was one occasion, and that was validated by the police. And the way that he did it was so deceitful and so hidden, so covert. But there's also, the majority of inappropriate sexual behaviour that came from my mother. But anyway, by the age of 12, I experienced sexual and physical abuse by both parents, psychological and emotional abuse, which goes hand in hand and is, in my opinion, the most dangerous form of abuse. There was no psychological or emotional connection with them because they have no conscience. They can't empathise with somebody else. I've been parentified, so neglected, and no empathy at all when I was bullied by others, or any circumstances, or any trying to confide in them with a problem was met with basically, so who cares? Not obviously those words, but the way that they spoke and behaved and things of that nature. So these are my symptoms before 12. When I was about 6, I was bullying kids my age, and that's a result of being bullied myself. So sort of monkey see, monkey do. That went on for a little bit during primary school, and eventually got to the stage where I realised that, hang on a second. So my empathy started to develop. I'm like, nah, I'm making people feel the way that people make me feel. I started to notice too, other people in my age group who were the same as me. I can now look back and realise that they grew up in the same environment, similar environment to what I did. So I developed empathy, not because of anything that my parents said of their behaviour, but because of being observant and having a sort of awareness of myself and the surroundings and things like that. But another symptom was dreams. From an early age, I had problems sleeping. And that's because of obsessive thinking. I'm in fight or flight. I'm trying to figure out where the threat is, who the threat is, what's going on. And trying to sleep at night was near on impossible. But once I got to sleep, I'd pretty much just sleep for a long time. So, but the dreams too was there's those sort of sleeping problems. There was also nightmares. From about 5 years old, I started having nightmares of beloved characters as a child. Characters that you find in Disney productions or TV shows, Sesame Street, and the dreams were freaking horrifying, man. Well, they were nightmares. These characters who I loved, when I watched them in my dreams, they were trying to kill me or would kill me, and in some cases I'd get sort of cannibalized in these dreams. But that was my subconscious mind telling me that there's something wrong with the people that are supposed to be close to you, and they're not there for your best interest. They're there for your destruction. So it's sort of interesting. I mean, I remember Accidental Light talking about how she has a lot of respect for her subconscious mind and for her mind in general, and I can certainly relate to that, because my mind was telling me from an early age that there's something wrong with the environment. Cutting. I started cutting in primary school. I ended up doing that as well as a teenager. I've still got can't see them on camera, but I've still got the scars from that. And that's goes hand in hand with anger and self-loathing, being constantly sort of inferred to, like, directly and indirectly, that I'm trash, so on and so forth. I started self-medicating with food in primary school. Food, yeah, the first sort of, drug that we get hold of, or something that we can use to make ourselves feel good, as it has, responses in the brain to do with serotonin and dopamine. So we get comfort from food, and we actually self-medicate. So it's like self-medicating with drugs, but using food instead. And that was through primary school. That was through high school. That was as an adult, and that as well. So feeling different to others, pretty much, yeah, sort of self-explanatory as well. We've been told lies by these people, and then we observe others and realise that, hang on a second, and then we start to feel different as a result. Wearing that projection and all the lies that they tell us, is a cause of feeling different as well. I ran away from home in primary school. I had no confidence, no self-esteem. I was in constant fear and dissociation, and had signs of depression and anxiety early as well. At the age of 6, 7, 8 years old, there were a number of suicide attempts where I tried to plunge a knife into my stomach. I was also asking to be adopted out of the family by this time because I knew that there was something wrong with them. I knew that they were I knew they were nuts, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And the power of psychological and emotional abuse is to manipulate the target's mind so that they can't figure out that the cause is not me, but it's them. So, so they're the abuse symptoms in primary school before the age of 12. In high school, I'm still self-medicating with food. My sleep problems are getting worse. Still cutting. The age of 13, 14, I went looking for, and this is the idiocy of my biological dad, leaving a freaking gun, a 22 rifle in the house with a cartridge of bullets just next to it, with 3 children in the house. And just a dickhead, this guy. But I went looking for the gun to shoot myself with. Couldn't figure out why. I mean, I hated myself, but I couldn't figure out why I did. So the depression, anxiety, and self-loathing starts to turn into anger and rage. Feeling different to others still. I'm scared and in a constant state of alert, but can't figure out why. I'm afraid to take part in class discussions and activities due to the fear of being ridiculed, which goes directly back to my parents. I feel safe when I'm by myself. I prefer to be by myself at this stage because there's no threat. There's no direct threat. It's just me, myself, and I feel safe around myself. Also, remember as a teenager, and this is the CPTSD, the constant sort of state of alert, trying to find a threat but not being able to figure out where it's coming from. But I used to, I could tell, I knew at all stages how many people were, say, in a classroom. I knew how many people were in a classroom at any given moment because I'd be constantly counting in my mind 1, 2, 3, 4, say 30 people. And then if someone left to go to the toilet or something, I was aware of that they were gone. And this is like an obsession, sort of, I suppose, part of obsessive compulsive disorder, one of that symptoms, which is when you look at the symptoms of people who have been abused, it's quite common for that to be there. So I was very aware. I hated being in rooms like a whole school assembly when you got like hundreds of people. I can't keep count of how many people are there. So I hated that. I get nervous and sort of scared in those situations because I couldn't keep an eye on everybody through my vision, through my peripheral vision. So it made it hard to sort of feel safe. But that was part of, it's part of fight or flight, right? It's realizing that there's a certain amount of people around me, and I can keep an eye on them and feel safe. Suicide attempt at 19, and cutting led up to this attempt as well, self-loathing, all that sort of stuff. And that was swept under the rug by my family altogether. I mean, after the attempt, they called, the crisis assessment team, the ambulance and things like that. But the only reason why they did that is because there was a person in the house at the time who was outside of the family. So it was done for appearance reasons. It wasn't done because of empathy. It wasn't done because of compassion, because of love. I mean, after I did it, my dad tried to rip my freaking hair off my head. It gives you an idea of, and that was an instance of him going into narc rage or psychopathic rage. But anyway, oh yes, before that too, I developed an eating disorder. I went from self-medicating with food to training 3 days a week. 3 hours a week. 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, obsessive. My food intake went to obsessive as well. So I went from one end of the spectrum to the other. I ended up losing a lot of weight, but it wasn't healthy. I mean, it was obsession. And if I ate the wrong thing, or what I thought was the wrong thing, the guilt would kick in, and I'd put my fingers down my throat and and puke it up. But bulimia, an eating disorder is also another common symptom of being abused as a kid. All these symptoms that I'm sharing are reactions to abuse. So after the suicide attempt, I started getting major problems with digesting food, indigestion, reflux. I'd have to, if I ate something, I'd have to have like a teaspoon of bicarb soda and water after it so I could burp and so I could digest the food. And this is something that has continued up until about 3 weeks ago when I changed my diet, and I haven't had problems with digestion since, which has been great. But my coping mechanism, the adrenal system went screwy as well. My coping mechanism was codependency and / people pleaser syndrome, and that was at the detriment of my own health. So that comes a lot from, well, it comes from both parents, but my mother basically groomed me to to take care of, or put her first, or not just put her first, but put everyone else before me, which, indirectly taught me that I didn't mean shit, that I was garbage, and that I was selfish for not putting everyone else before me, which is a projection of what she is. So, but what I want to try and show with these symptoms, and there are more. There are other symptoms. Now, there's more in adulthood. There's some really dark ones as well, which I won't go into. But the point of sharing these is to try and illustrate that these are normal reactions to abusive people. If you have a look at the adverse childhood experiences studies, you'll find that these are normal reactions. If you have a look at the symptoms of an abused child or someone who's been abused by a narc, whatever, you'll find very similar symptoms. And realizing that, because these symptoms, these reactions to their abuse, is used by them to try and brainwash me into thinking that there's something wrong with me, when the reality is the cause of these symptoms is them. And I don't have to feel guilty or shameful about having these symptoms, because they are the cause, and it was normal for me to react that way. If you want to go down the path, so the point is that putting that into context, these symptoms too have been used to as part of the smear campaign. So the smear campaign is the narcs' attempt to control the perception of others, to hide what they are. So if they got their scapegoat a child, they will do what they do. The child will react to their abuse, and then they'll point to the child and say, "There's something wrong with this kid, and I want to help him, or I want to help her, and I don't know what's wrong with him. I don't know what's wrong with her." And that's used to distract, to control the perception of others, because they use those symptoms of abuse to point out that there is an issue, but then they say that the child is the issue, when the reality is that the parents are the issue. So it's used to control the perception of others, and it's used as a distraction to hide the reality that they are the abusers. So they're controlling the perception of others outside of the family as well. Putting that in context with me was huge, as far as healing is concerned, because I put in the context of their mind and realizing their behavior, and then realizing that they are the cause to the symptoms that I had growing up, and realizing that they're normal symptoms. And so with their projection and their bullshit that they say to us, they try and brainwash us with, I'm able to undo that even further, because I know that all the stuff that they said about me is a reaction to abuse, and it is their disorder as to why I had those reactions in the first place, and their disorder and their projection as to why I blamed myself for those reactions. So by putting that into context, I've been able to, like that return to sender, return it back to them, and not carry that burden of their projection, of their lies and their bullshit. So I'm able to replace their lies with the truth. By putting things into context, I'm able to tell myself the truth as opposed to reinforcing their psychological and emotional abuse by telling myself their projection, which is lies. So this shows too, I mean, the strength of the scapegoat, or the strength of anybody who's been abused and who's woken up. I know there are, if I could walk outside my house and take somebody to 7 different families who had the same pathology as what I grew up in, and none of them have woken up. And for me to wake up shows the strength of myself, but it also shows the strength when I see other survivors sharing their story. It shows me their strength as well. When I look at other survivors, whether they're doing, videos or in comment sections, I see intelligence, I see strength, and I see resilience, and I see compassion. And understanding that for myself, that how strong I was to actually go through all this shit for decades, then to wake up, then to start healing and get to the stage where I am now, that is a justification for me as to my intelligence, my strength, my compassion, my resiliency, and I'm able to look back on that and use that as fuel. If I can survive that and come out of that abuse, then if I have a tough day, I know that I can make it through that. So with other survivors, if you look back into your childhood and you see like signs, symptoms like this, even as an adult as well, symptoms like this, try and reframe it into the correct, what I think is the correct context. And that one is that's a normal reaction to being around toxic people. And 2, it shows how strong you are. It shows your strength. When I was talking about the pathological families before, just 7 around my area, these people have, like, the kids have turned. They haven't been able to wake up. So that's what I mean by strength. We go through this sort of stuff and we wake up, and that's a massive amount of strength, instead of yielding to their abuse and turning and becoming like them. So try and use, when you look at your own past in that, 1, put it into context. It's a normal reaction to abuse. 2, realize how fucking strong you are for being able to go through that, then wake up, because waking up is painful and it's hard to do, and then making your way through that healing process. So, and then by that too, you're able to undo their projection. There's a problem with you because you did this. There's a problem with you because you did that. Bullshit. The abuser, that environment is why I reacted that way. There is not a problem with me because I reacted that way. So you can take your projection and you can stick it up your ass. So if you want to look further into the symptoms of abuse, to try and put into context more what happened to you, into what I believe is a correct context, have a look at Stefan Molyneux's presentation called The Bomb in the Brain. Have a look at, do a Google search or a YouTube search for the adverse childhood experience studies, because you'll see the same sort of symptoms. You'll see the same sort of health problems. And it'll help you put into context that you're not abnormal for going through having these symptoms. It's normal to go through that. And it shows your strength. It shows how strong you are. Also, have in the back of your head too, the back of your mind, that having these symptoms doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have them for the rest of your life. There is a phenomenon called brain plasticity or neuroplasticity, where I've been able to reverse everything that was put into my mind, all the lies and stuff, and then I've been able to change the configuration of my brain and change the way that I think. So I don't think that you are stuck. There was a stage where I thought, I'm fucked for life. I'm going to be like this for life, in regards to the PTSD when I first woke up. But as I learnt more and realised that this is normal to react this way, I realized that's bullshit, and I don't have to accept that, and I can work towards getting healthier and healthier, and I did. So I hope this video helps. I was trying to sort of stress the importance of putting things into context, because when you put, they've taken things out of context to abuse us. If we can put things back into context, we can undo their abuse, and we can get the proper perspective on what happened to us, on what our abusers are and their mental state, and we can get a better perspective on who we are as people, our strength, our resiliency, our love, our compassion, our intelligence, and from there we can, I hope that it can help. Well, for me, it's helped me heal, and I hope that it can help others heal as well. So anyway, it's pretty much all I have to say. So this is Kurt signing off. I hope this video is helpful, and